Hello, guys. So, as he said, my name is Maximiliano, right? You can call me Max, that's okay. And I would like to talk to you 15 minutes about the possible mobile future. To talk about that first, maybe we are going to talk about the past. And I will try to mix that with my own past, okay? So, change is the only constant is the title of this presentation. So, let's try to see quickly the past of the mobile development ecosystem to understand the possible future. So from 1995, that was the time that when I have started doing web development, right, at the time, HTML, not CSS yet, it wasn't there yet. But I remember hearing a lot of voices that you're going to recognize in a minute. So that was basically 18 years ago, right? So that was the phone I was using at the time. Of course, it doesn't have a screen, but I remember people and these boys telling something like, oh, who is going to walk in the street and at the same time talking on a phone? Nobody, right? Do you recognize that voice? So 14 years ago, I started doing web development. So something called WML, black and white screens, just 3 or 4 lines of text. And people were telling, who is going to browse the web on a tiny screen, right? Nobody. 10 years ago, I did my first mobile app, right? That was 2003. It was a game, right? A card game. Again, after a year, I had like 100K downloads. But I remember when I was doing the game, people were saying, who is going to play with that tiny screen, without those tiny buttons, right? Nobody's going to play on a mobile phone. So these boys were always there, right? And basically the market is always creating its own path. 9 years ago, I had my first phone with a camera, right? It was, I remember correctly, it was 0.3 megapixels, right? So people were looking at the camera there and asking, why do you need a camera on a mobile phone? Who is going to use a camera on a mobile phone, right? Why do we need a camera? Nobody's going to use that camera, right? And 1 year, just 1 year after the first massive camera on a mobile phone, Nokia became the most popular digital camera vendor on the market. 7 years ago, I had this Nokia N95 with GPS, right, and maps. And the same voice again, who is going to use a map on a phone? Why do we need a map there? Okay, so this is just 7 years ago. Just 7 years ago. 6 years ago, just 6 years ago, we have the first iPhone. Okay, and who is going to use that thing without any button? A touch keyboard? What is that, right? 3 years ago, just 3 years ago, right, the iPad has appeared. Again, who is going to use a big iPhone without keyboard? Nobody's going to use that, right? And again, here we are, okay? And next year, right, we will have in the market maybe this, the Google Glass. And the same voice is still saying, who is going to wear that on the street? Right? Have you heard that? So I'm not saying that the glass is going to be the device. I don't know, but it's possible because this voice has been here with me, right, for 18 years, telling me that these things are not going to work in the market. And that was basically a lie. So what will happen in 5 years or 10 years? It's really impossible to say, right? But I want to, based on the history, I want to show you some ideas that will help you like being more prepared for the possible future in the mobile ecosystem. So just another example, 3 years ago, I did this book, Programming the Mobile Web. And it was during 10 months, more or less. And it was a real challenge writing this book because while I was writing the book, the mobile web market was changing, right? And this year, I have released the second edition. And it's basically a whole new book. More than 80 or 90% of the book, it's new content. Because the whole mobile web has changed in just 3 years. You can see the difference in size, right? So in the last 13 years, I have been doing apps in all these languages for all those platforms. So from WML to HTML5, going through native iOS, Android, Windows Phone, and Palm OS. So I have experience working with all the platforms, all the SDKs, and even all the native web technologies, or the web technologies such as HTML5. So I have an idea of how fast all this market is changing, and has changed in just 13 years. So let's see some constants and things that were always with me during all these years. And with me means with the mobile ecosystem. Performance was always an issue, right? Performance was always the first complaint from users. Battery is always a problem. When you ask me, what do you think about the glass? What do you think is the main issue right now? And my answer is the battery life, right? So battery life is always an issue, and it has been always an issue. Frustration, user frustration. That's the other constant that has been with us all these years, right? User frustration. We have been lost the power of wonder, right? For now we see the glass and you say, well, it's a glass, right? So it's like, for us, we are not having this power of wonder of, hey, look at this. You have this tiny phone. I have a GPS. So try to go back 15 years and show that phone to anyone 15 years ago, right? So we have been losing that power. We get used too easily. Practice 2 with double O. So that means, how many of you are on iOS 7 today? So have you seen iOS 6 in the last week? Doesn't it look so old? Huh? So, oh, what is that? Right? Ugly, old. And the same happens with my phone. I have a Nexus 5 now, and now I take the Nexus 4 and say, oh, the screen is so small, the resolution, right? So we are getting used to new stuff too easily. I like to say that in these 18 years, the whole mobile ecosystem, or mobile development ecosystem, feels like walking on a minefield. I'm not sure if you have experience walking on a minefield, right? But at least some of you may have experience doing mobile apps, and maybe it's similar. So why it's walking on a minefield? On a minefield, you don't have a clear path, right? And you're not sure. You make the step, but you're not really sure, right? So you say, okay, let's go with HTML5, but you're not really sure. Or let's do BlackBerry 10. You're not really sure, right? You're not really sure if you're going to explode at any time. So it's a feeling that has been with us all this year, the feeling of being walking on a minefield. I have seen this a lot, right? So if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I'm seeing a lot of fanatism here, where so when people say, no, I want to use HTML5 always. Oh, no, native. No, this one. So we have a lot of solutions. As I said before, I have been doing more than 20 platforms, different languages, and each platform, each language has its own rules, its own advantages and disadvantages. So this is another thing that we have been seeing all this time. So talking about the future for mobile development. First, the future is unknown. You need to accept that. We need to live with an unknown future. We don't know what will happen in 5 years. Change is the only constant. The change is the only thing that we know for sure, we have granted for sure that is going to happen. So everything is going to change. What is the problem with that? That we hate change, right? As humans, we hate change. So that's why sometimes we don't recognize the change. But everything is changing all the time in the mobile space. We will see some blurry limits. For example, on the discussion of native versus web versus cloud. So I'm seeing in the next years, users will not recognize if that's a website, what is that? I don't know, right? I'm just asking something on the phone. The phone is giving me a result. The result can become an icon on the home screen. I don't know if that's an app, a website, or what is that, right? So I'm not seeing limits so clear, right? For example, on the glass, I can have web apps, I can have native apps, and they look all the same. right, on the Google Glass. The user will be more in charge on how, when, and why it's going to use your content. So you're not going to say, hey, you need to access this service or my content from X device. No, the user will want to use any device, okay? We are going to see phones as hubs right now. So here I have the Glass, I have a smartwatch, and basically both devices are using my phone as a hub, okay? So we're going to see people using less the phone and more any other device that those are being connected to my phone. Also, I think that we're going to see a smart sync. So if you send me an email right now, you are going to see that my smartwatch will vibrate. My Glass is going to make me a sound here in my brain directly. My phone is going to vibrate and sound. So you don't know how my ceiling looks like when I'm sleeping, right? It's like Christmas. Right? I have a Christmas tree when I'm receiving an email at 1 a.m. because all the devices are telling me that I have a mention in Facebook, right? Or something like that. So we will need more smart syncing. So that's something that is going to happen. And here comes the part where I'm talking about wearable smart devices, right? Sometimes when we say smart devices that we're going to wear, we can think of something like this, right? Remember this from GetSmart? The smart shoe. But basically we are talking about the glasses, maybe some sport hardware and gadgets or smart watches. Even, have you seen this? The smart bra. Right? That's not a joke. That's a patent that Microsoft has acquired last week, something like that. The smart bra, okay? So let's talk about, okay, how can we survive, right, in this crazy world where change is the only constant? Well, first be happy and embrace the change. That's my first suggestion, right? My first recommendation. Embrace the change. You should know that everything is going to change, and that's okay. You should be happy with that. Create an open architecture and think about pull and push. Pull means the user is accessing your information or your services from devices, and push means you are going to send that information based on smart decisions from your server. So the Glass, for example, or smartwatches, that maybe the next year will be the year where we're going to see a lot of devices and solutions for smart glasses and watches. So most of the services and apps works with a push technology. Think about this. Think about different inputs that go into feed your own database, your own data, your smart data. You're going to make something, you're going to add value to that data, and you're going to send that data to different outputs, right? Embrace diversity in terms of input. So maybe you're going to receive information from the phone, from the Glass, from the smart bra, right? From your shoe that is sending information about your steps. So you're going to receive a lot of input from different sources from each user. You're going to add value on your server, and then you're going to make an output in different formats for every kind of device, or every possible kind of device in the future. Be smart for smart devices. I've seen a lot of non-smart apps or websites, right? Don't ask me things that you already know, for example. Don't make me make more taps or clicks than I need to. Be smart, right? That's something that is not going to change in the future. You need to be smart. You need to surprise your user. And that's how you're going to keep your user with you. Don't think on apps as a unit. So don't create apps. Create content or services, and then different views for that content and service. So an app, an iPhone app or an Android app will be just a view for your service, just a view for your content. I'm seeing a lot of companies and people thinking on apps. So I'm going to create an iPhone app. You shouldn't care about iPhone app, right? You should care about the service, the value that you are going to create, and then the iPhone app will be just one part, one view, okay, for your service or your content. That's something that is not going to change, and in fact is going to be stronger. Why? Because everything is going to change. So if you are focused just on one platform, you say Android, for example. I have the best Android app. And maybe in 2 years, Android changes, we don't know, and now it's not there anymore in the same way, and you are frustrated because, oh, my app, that it was the best app, now how can I create something different? Well, don't think about the app. Think about your content and your services. So it will be easy for you, or easier for you, to add a new module, right? A new view for that. Performance, ubiquity should be your first priority. These are always the main concerns and the main problems from a user's point of view. So think about that a lot. So sometimes, for example, just to give you a quick idea, and I don't have time for this at this point, but sometimes responsive web design is against performance. So I hear about responsive web design. Sometimes it's not the best solution for performance. But if performance is your first priority, then maybe responsive web design is not the best solution. Don't be a fanatic, okay? Not everything is a nail. So no, I'm just a native developer. I hate HTML5. No, I do all with CSS. No, I just create Android app because it's open source. Or I just create the iPhone app because I was in love with Steve Jobs. So don't be a fanatic, and embrace diversity and all kinds of services and solutions. And remember that change is the only constant. That's a quote from Heraclitus, right, a couple of centuries ago, that fits perfect on the mobile development ecosystem. Okay, that was all. Thank you.